There is a phrase that is going to sound familiar, and for some of you, it may even still be comforting, especially if you were raised in Christianity, and even if you are deconstructing. And that phrase is religious liberty, or it may be said as freedom of religion or freedom from religion. Many of us were taught to hear that phrase as something sacred, something worth protecting, something that ensured our right to believe, to worship, to live out our faith without interference was protected by the Constitution. But the battle about what that phrase actually means has been happening for a really long time, long before Jerry Falwell's moral majority, that on the surface many Christians thought was a noble, patriotic effort to bring God back to our nation, when in reality it was anything but. It has always been about prioritizing segregation so that the white Christian man would never lose power. And I'm going to be very clear here. We're not just talking about the Christians who support Trump. There are Christians like Mike Pence who also muddy the waters about what religious freedom means, and they are just as dangerous. In 2022, Mike Pence went on Fox News to conflate the meaning of freedom from religion.
Well, the radical left believes the freedom of religion is the freedom from religion. But it's nothing the American founders ever thought of.
I'll put the link to that entire video in my notes because it is worth watching. But we just need to be careful because there are Christians who like to romanticize what religious liberty means. If you've been following for a while, you know that I do not trust Mike Pence, and I consider him just as dangerous as Donald Trump. He is just as intent on suffocating human rights through the very narrow lens of what he thinks a Christian nation should look like. So I'm going to close my rant on Mike Pence because you'll hear more about him at another time. He seems to be one of my favorite subjects. But let's fast forward to Project 2025's initiatives, which include initiatives to infiltrate Christian dominance in all spheres of influence. Those areas of influence are based on the Seven Mountain Mandate that calls for Christians to lead and mandate policies and influence related to arts and entertainment, business, education, government, family, media, and religion. If you just pause a minute, you can see how much of what the Trump administration is doing right now is right out of Project 2025. You know, the Project 2025 that Trump said he knew nothing about. That one. Last year, Trump created the Religious Liberty Commission to task them with creating a report on the state of religious liberty in America, identifying threats to it, and providing recommendations for protection of it. But what's clear now is that the Religious Liberty Commission created by Donald Trump is not about protecting religious liberty. It's about reshaping it and utilizing the playbook of Project 2025 that will reinforce the Seven Mountain Mandate. Their most recent hearing, the commission's chair, Dan Patrick, made a statement that should give all of us pause. He claimed that there is no such thing as separation of church and state in the Constitution, and that this idea has been used to suppress people of faith. Now let's be clear here. When Dan Patrick or anyone on this commission talks about faith, they are not talking about anyone other than Christian-focused. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about that in a minute. But for those of us who grew up hearing that Christians were under attack, this all may sound like some kind of truth is being restored. Even if you're deconstructing, this may confound your senses to believe there's nothing wrong with what Dan Patrick said. But slow down and examine what exactly he said and what this commission is doing. Because if there is no separation between church and state, then the question is no longer whether religion influences government. The question becomes which religion and whose version of it is allowed to shape the lives of all of us. That question becomes even clearer when you look at who is sitting on this commission. You see a collection of influential Christian leaders, political figures, and legal advocates alongside a small degree of Jewish representation. Then you have names like Franklin Graham, Paula White, two of the biggest enablers of Donald Trump. And there's some Catholic leadership as well. But you know what there isn't? There is no Muslim representation, no Hindu, no Buddhist, no Sikh, no indigenous spiritual leadership, and no voices representing those who identify as secular or non-religious. Yet this commission claims to define religious liberty for the entire nation. Absence of representation from many faith and secular or non-religious communities, all of that is intentional. Because when a group claims to protect all faiths while excluding those faiths from the table, what they are actually protecting is not freedom from religion. They are protecting their power and influence in the spheres outlined in the Seven Mountain Mandate. What is being presented as a defense of faith is in practice the elevation of one particular religious framework into public life. And here's what's interesting. Even inside that framework, there is disagreement. And this is where the story becomes even more nuanced. Because Robert Barron publicly criticized Donald Trump for his attacks on the Pope, calling Trump's comments inappropriate and suggesting that an apology was owed to the Pope. Now, on the surface, that moment can look like accountability, like perhaps there's a sign that there are voices within the commission willing to push back. But that's not what's happening at all. And Occupy Democrats posted about Barron's criticism of Trump while calling out his hypocrisy on his statement. Barron remains on a commission that excludes entire religious communities while helping shape a definition of religious liberty that centers Christianity in public life. His willingness to call out Trump's tone does not extend to challenging the composition or purpose of the commission he serves on. This is a pattern many people who have deconstructed from Christianity will recognize. There can be an internal critique without any shift in the underlying system. This disagreement gives the appearance of balance, but the structure continues unchanged. In fact, Barron lays the groundwork to elevate certain players in the Trump administration as being the good Catholic by calling them out as being above Trump's insults of the Pope. They are not above those insults. They are cowards and submissive, and as such, dangerous because they do his bidding without regard for who they are harming. So now back to Project 2025, which redefines religious freedom in a way that prioritizes these specific Christian beliefs within government, education, and public institutions. Through expanded religious exemptions, shifts in how civil rights are protected and interpreted, and the redirection of public funding into religious education systems, the groundwork is being laid for a society where one theological perspective is given increased authority in shaping law and policy for every United States citizen. This is where the language of religious liberty becomes even more revealing. Because what is being described as oppression is in many cases the experience of no longer being centered. These are the Christians who take offense of being asked to share space, of being told that one belief system cannot define public life for everyone. For those who were taught that Christianity should guide society, that shift does feel like a loss. It does feel like a threat. It can feel like something is being taken away. But what is actually happening is that the boundaries meant to protect everyone equally are being reframed as an attack. Pause with me here, because if you're deconstructing from Christianity, this moment can be both disorienting and clarifying. It's often disoriented because it challenges deeply held beliefs about faith, freedom, and identity. But it can be clarifying because it reveals how often the language of faith has been used to mask the pursuit of power. We all must understand this. Religious freedom does not require dominance. It does not need to be enforced through government policy or embedded into our public institutions. It exists when people of all beliefs and no belief are able to live without coercion, without exclusion, and without one system being elevated above others. So when you hear the phrase religious liberty now, it is worth listening more carefully, not just to the words, but to those who are speaking it. Who are they including in their language? But more importantly, who is being left out? Because the version of religious freedom being advanced in this moment is not about protecting everyone. It is about redefining freedom in a way that preserves power for those who have long held it. And once you begin to see that, it changes how you understand not only this commission, but the broader system it represents. This commission is dangerous. And none of its work is meaningful because it only exists to protect white Christian patriarchy and one sect of Christianity that protects white supremacy. Now, if you're deconstructing from Christianity and you want to support my work, be sure to follow me on all my platforms and be notified when my latest teachings become available.